Hi there, it's Dr. Hudgens. I have read your discussion board posts and provided feedback on your rubrics in your final grade. I'd encourage you to take a look and see what that feedback was. For the most part, you guys did a great job. This is one of those discussion boards that I think really lends itself to people who like to talk about their clinical experiences and what they're experiencing in their work setting. So I really enjoyed listening to your different perspectives and different ideas about what each of these three concepts meant for you. It was interesting for me to see how a few of you blended in the perspective, the biblical perspective. One of the first ones, one of the first concepts was regarding experimentation. And your classmate Suzanne did a wonderful job talking about what this may look like from a biblical perspective. She wrote that as an assistant nurse manager, I'm conscious of the fact that I need to exhibit Christ to all that I meet. So I take what I have learned in class and attempt to synthesize it from a biblical perspective. So I thought about the first statement about how, without experimentation, an organization is doomed. It brought to mind how the apostles all had to do away with their old way of thinking. For example, they had to experiment with the fact that Gentiles were now to be part of the fold. This meant that they had to experiment with how they worshiped the Lord, because they needed to now include other languages besides Hebrew. Perhaps their experimental ways didn't always work either. I think that is such a great insight. We think that we're doing something so novel and inventive in 2016 that we somehow were the first ones to think, hey, we should try an experiment. And I do believe that even in biblical times, there were processes that were tried and tested and then reinvented or renewed to do a different thing with it. So I think it's great insight for us to be able to think back, what kind of biblical lessons are there to support our practice? And I do think the apostles give us a great blueprint to look at how innovation may have looked back then. When we think about firefighting versus fire prevention, your classmate Kyle did a great job. He looked at it as firefighting versus fire prevention and really honed in on the value of the prevention being more valuable, a more valuable way of spending time than firefighting. And many of you took that stance of that the firefighting was not a worthwhile activity. I want to remind you that while it is not a productive way to solve a problem for a long term, there's a certain element in our leadership positions that does require us to firefight. When you walk in and you realize that you had 6 nurses scheduled and 3 of them have called out, you don't have a whole lot of time to go backwards and process and look at your entire staffing blueprint and think the pros and cons of how you can fix it. At that very moment, you need to firefight. You need to figure out, where can I get extra hands? Where can I get extra qualified hands? And how do I get safe patient care provided in this moment, in this time? Then you need to go back in and look at the root cause. So we want to acknowledge that firefighting is not the most effective way and is not a long-term strategy for problem solving, but we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and ignore the fact that our jobs sometimes require us to do that to be productive. So again, you guys had lots of great ideas, lots of great clinical examples, which I really enjoyed reading. From an APA grammatical standpoint, you guys are doing really, really well. The only thing that I see occasionally is not remembering to add your DOI or to find the associated URL. Remember that you have the crossref.com link. It's available in Blackboard. So if you want to look and make sure your article doesn't have a DOI, that's a good reference source to drop in the name of your article and authors, and it'll see if it has a DOI associated with it. If there is no associated DOI, you need to put the abbreviated URL so that your article can be located. Normally, we encourage you, when you're doing a URL in lieu of a DOI, is to back it up to the search engine. Otherwise, you'll have 3, 4, 5 lines of hyperlink, and that's just it's too unwieldy to put in a reference list. So that's really the only thing I saw. Looking forward to week 6, you remember your practicum log 2 is due. So go back in and look at your practicum log 1. If there were gaps, if there were things missing, brush that up and apply it to an improvement in practice log 2. Again, this one's only worth 25 points, so you have some time to continue to tweak it and figure out how to make it better. The last one is 100 points, so you want to really figure out the best way to approach it in these first 2. The other thing that's is due is your assignment for, I think it's reflective exercise 4. Yep, it's reflective exercise 4. And this is the one that really offers a great deal of personal reflection. It's one of my favorite ones to read because it really does talk about your journey and your experience of what it means to be a servant leader. And there's 4 aspects that you're going to cover. I want to caution you that this has a very personal feel to it. You're going to feel like you're telling a story. There is a requirement to reference, to have some references in here. I think your rubric calls for 3 to 5. Use those as appropriate to bolster statements or facts that you want to put in to your into the body of your work. But do not forget to cite sources to give your paper some scholarly value. If you have questions or concerns, if there's anything going on that you need to talk about, I am here. There's an awful lot going on at this time of year, so I know that your head's probably swimming as much as mine is. But I don't want you to hesitate to send me an email or set up a time to talk by phone. I hope you guys have a great week. I will look forward to seeing your papers from this week and seeing your practicum logs. Again, I'm here if there's anything I can do for you. You guys have a great week. Take care.